Why are you looking at me like that? Hi. Pretty girl. My good Brenda. My good Brenda. She a good girl. She is a very good girl. She's like, why did you stop petting me, Mommy? Keep petting me. Yeah, okay, I'll pet you a little bit more while I talk and explain what the video is today. Okay, so this one is the first one of my Dressrosa Kingdom videos in regards to kind of the history and the various royal family members and royalty and leaders and stuff like that that I'm going to be talking about for Dressrosa. This one obviously is going to take longer than either the Alabasta one or the Ryugu Kingdom video, mostly because of the fact that there's more people involved in this and two families that I will be discussing in this regard. So basically, this first video is kind of going to be an overview of the history of Dressrosa, so talking a bit about ancient Dressrosa with the Doflamingo family, with the Don Quixote family in charge, and then its transition into being the Riku family and everything, and then some other things that we are aware of in regards to the history of the kingdom and moving closer and closer to the modern day. And then on the individual videos, when I talk about King Rikudo III and his own, Scarlet and her own, Viola and her own, Rebecca and her own, Kyros is going to get his own video because he is technically a member of the royal family, and the fact that he married into the royal family and is the father of one of the princesses. And all of them are going to get their own videos. Kind of the only one of the family member that's not going to get their own video is Scarlet and Viola's mother, because A, we never get her name, and B, we have no idea if she's still alive. She's probably not, given the fact that we didn't see her throughout the Dressrosa arc, but I'm assuming she didn't die a tragic death. So, I don't know. But, so each of them will be getting their own videos, and then I will be doing a video, of course, about Don Quixote do Flamingo, in his role. Mostly just like an entire video about him is going to be a very long video, given all the information that we know about him, and such. I am debating about doing a separate video where I talk about Doflamingo's parents, about Homing and his wife, and about Rocinante. But Rocinante was never really the ruler of anything, not necessarily, and then both of Doflamingo's parents, Homing and his wife, who I wish got a name, in all honesty, and she came back with her rope. Well, and then you dropped it. Are you going to play with your rope? I can't throw it from all the way over there. You have to bring it here. She's like, no, I want you to reach it, and I want you to pet me. Okay, I can pet you. I still can't reach the rope. It's too far away. Her, get longer arms. Use the string powers like the man that you're going to talk about eventually. Yeah, I don't really, well, okay. Admittedly, Doflamingo's string powers would be kind of cool to have. I will admit that. You could fly around. You could, you know, do a whole bunch of stuff, make clones, make giant bird cages, which I would not do. Have clones of me running around. This one's going to rest. This one's going to work. And then flip back and forth. That would be good. But no, I'll do separate videos about all the different Riku family members that we know about. And then, hey, what you doing? Don't do that. But I'm cute. I know you're cute, and you dropped your rope over there. You will snuggle with me later when I'm editing, I promise. She snuggles with me when I edit, and a good chunk of the rest of the time she snuggles with me on my chair. But right now I need to do this. She's like, you're just gonna have 5 whole minutes in this thing of you talking to me for no reason. Well, there's not, well, it's not no reason. I love you and I love talking with you. Brenda, I would be worried if you wanted me to talk back. Well, you know that too. But, and then, I mean, I did the whole video about Milzigard, and I might end up doing a video about Doflamingo's parents, but I just haven't decided that yet because I kind of already did that when I talked about them for the couples videos. But, you know, we'll see. So this one is the history of Dressrosa to a degree, and I'll go much over more detailed versions of the events when I go to the different family members, obviously. So things that we know about Dressrosa: it is an island in the New World, and it is one of the 20 kingdoms that had its king at the time was one of the founding members of the world government, the old, twisted, evil Don Quixote family member, Don Quixote king that we knew about, or that we were told about in the Tontada legend, was the ruler at the time. And then they went off and joined, founded the world government, and then them and their descendants moved up to Marijua and became celestial dragons. And then, of course, that eventually leads to Doflamingo and Rocinante and Helming and his wife and Milzigard, and probably some other ones, in all honesty. Leads to them eventually. And then when they left the Riku family in charge instead. Going through, in regards to this, I believe Dressrosa is supposed to be kind of like a spring or a summer island. I don't remember if it's ever specifically stated, but I could be wrong about that. General information about the kingdom: obviously, their original ruler way back 800 some years ago was one of the ones responsible for founding the world government, eventually became celestial dragon, blah 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 blah. During the time frame that the Riku family ruled, they were very compassionate leaders and very caring about their citizens and everything like that, and even tried to make some amends with the Tontadas and everything, which I will eventually get to. Mon Sherry and her father are going to be like their own separate video in regards to the Tontada kingdom and such, because they qualify. They're a king and a princess, and we'll see kind of what happens much later on for Dressrosa, but generally at the moment they're obviously based off of combinations of Rome and Spain. Spain and the way that they dress and everything like that, in regards to like the dresses that a lot of the women wear and stuff like that, particularly that we see Viola wear, like her dancing outfits and everything like that. And then in regards to Rome, they of course have their battle coliseum, which is very much kind of like this centerpiece of the city, where it is, it's not considered shameful to be a gladiator there, as we see develop throughout the course of what we see with Kyros' backstory and everything. And then, of course, they have the fairies that believed to live in the country, and those are, of course, the Tontada. And eventually it is, of course, explained, or it's told to us, that the fairies take people's belongings and they're kind of treated as offerings according to the residents themselves, because the Tontadas help with making the flowers and the plants grow all over the island, keeping the island lush and beautiful and everything like that. I would assume Dressrosa has a fairly good tourism industry, given the fact that it's, this country that's known for its beautiful flowers, its cuisine, its passionate women, and its, the battle coliseum and such. And then it would be a very popular tourist destination for those who could make the journey, and such. And, for the ones who have the money and are brave enough to try to travel to Dressrosa from varying different places, I would assume. Although there's a lot of Yonko territory around them, so between Totland and whatever, wherever Shanks is, where Whitebeard used to be, where Blackbeard currently is, where, where Kaido's territory is with Wano and everything. There's a lot of Emperor territory around Dressrosa. And then, of course, it ends up being under the control of a warlord in the form of Doflamingo, who is, of course, allied with an emperor in the form of Kaido. Speaking of Doflamingo, one of the other things that ends up happening to the country during Doflamingo's 10-year reign is, of course, it becomes known as this kind of fantasy type island where there are toys that run around that are alive and sentient and have personalities and everything, and that the humans interact with the toys and everything else and like live alongside them, except they're not allowed to be in the same houses and everything like that. And of course, as we go through the story, we of course learn that no, it's not quite the case. Well, they are toys. They are not willingly toys. They are people who are basically being held prisoner and being slaves because of sugar and Doflamingo. In regards to kingdom information, we get these little kingdom information boxes occasionally in these things, but this one and Alabaster are like the only two that really give us, I think, a major amount of kingdom information. We of course know that Riku Dole III is the current king of Dressrosa. Don Quixote Doflamingo was the former king. Important people are, of course, Viola is the current princess. Scarlet is kind of the former crown princess, given the fact that she died. Rebecca is also a former crown princess in the fact that she abdicated her throne, so that way Viola could be the one that would be the current crown princess and the one that would be the heir to the throne. I went over some of this stuff, or I would have gone over some similar things to this, in the fact that when it comes to you know, family heritage, or not heritage, but when it comes to like heirs of kingdoms and stuff like that, if there are no, sometimes it's either just the firstborn period, which seems to be what it was in Alabaster to a degree. May also just be the case here, where it is just the firstborn child is the one that is the heir, and then even if they die, as long as they have a kid, then the heir, then it would go to their child instead. In this case, it was Scarlet was the original heir to the throne, and the fact that she was the elder daughter, but she, of course, abdicated her throne, her position, and, you know, supposedly died, so that way she could end up marrying Kyros. And then, of course, they had Rebecca. And then, of course, Viola was then the crown princess after that, because since Scarlet, you know, abdicated, Viola would become the next heir. And then after everything happened with Doflamingo and all of that stuff, then it is, you know, Rebecca was offered this position as becoming the new crown princess after finding out about her lineage and everything like that, and getting the full story about it and everything. And she would have accepted it, but she just wanted to go and, of course, live with her father and just, you know, get to actually live with her father in the same house as her father, with him not being a toy, and with both of them being fully aware of who the other one is. Which is, of course, just, yeah, the anime kind of harps a bit too much on some of that stuff with Rebecca and stuff like that, with showing the flashback far too often for Rebecca. The manga doesn't nearly do it as much in, you know, throughout the course of it. I think you get it a little bit initially when you get Rebecca's flashback, then I think you get it a little bit again during the battle with Diamante. Or a little bit from, like, you know, Kyros' perspective at one point, but it's not as, you know, repeated as many times throughout the course of the arc as it is in the anime. But, you know, Rebecca then abdicates her own throne, or abdicates her position, and she basically ends up eventually becoming Viola's lady-in-waiting, and Viola is the one that is now the current crown princess. We also have Kyros as a very important figure within the Dressrosa society and stuff like that, and of course they have their alliance with the Tontaras. That is much more out in the open now. In regards to alliances or affiliations, they are, of course, Dressrosa is affiliated with the world government, because their king in the past, you know, 800, 900 some years ago, that Don Quixote king became one of the founding members, as I said, of the 20 royal families, and, you know, all of that. And then the Riku family was put in charge when the Doflamingo family, when the Don Quixote family left. And then, of course, they also have affiliations and alliances to a degree with the Straw Hat Pirates and the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, because of the debt that they feel that they owe Luffy for him and his crew and their friends helping defeat Doflamingo. There are no poneglyphs in the kingdom as far as we are aware, and we do not know the exact population number of the kingdom. I think with Alabasta, I think it was stated that it was, I think, 10 million, but I don't remember exactly if that was correct. I know it was at least in the millions, but I don't remember exactly how much in the millions. And Dressrosa seems to be at least as big, if not slightly bigger, than Alabasta was, but I'm not sure. Also, we do not have information about when Dressrosa was founded, nor I don't think we have any specific information about like how old the Colosseum is or how old the castle on the King's Plateau is. I don't believe we have any information about that, unlike with Alabaster, where we know how old Alabarna is and how old the kingdom itself is. Both of numbers escape me at the moment. Going into a little bit more of the history, as I said, 800 some years ago and everything like that, during the Void Century, or at the end of the Void Century, when the Great War was over against the Great Kingdom, the Don Quixote family were one of the 20 kingdoms that fought against the Great Kingdom, and then after the Great Kingdom was supposedly defeated, as far as we are aware, they, along with the other 19 families, founded the world government. And then the Don Quixote family at the time, along with their evil king, moved up to Marijua along with the rest of his family, moved up there with his family, and they left the Riku family in charge. I'm thinking that the Riku family were probably high-ranking members of the Dressrosa, island or so of the kingdom. Maybe they were another noble family that then basically got raised up to royalty as opposed to just nobility, and they took over. During the time frame that the Don Quixote family was in power, they had managed to, of course, find the Tontaras on Greenbit, or where the Tontaras were within Dressrosa itself, and they captured a ton of them and then used them in order to make money. They enslaved them, and eventually, after when the Riku family took control, or were put in control, the Riku family, the king at the time, who we don't know his actual name, he could have been King Riku Dold the First, and then eventually there was a second, and then the third is now currently king, but I don't know exactly. But the Riku king that took over released all of the Tontaras and actually, took his crown off and bowed to them and begged them for forgiveness for the kingdom, and promised that they would be allowed to still be within the kingdom and everything like that. And then, of course, that's where the myth of the fairies came in, that the Tontaras still kind of roam around the kingdom, and that they are, they do still take things, as we see demonstrated in the arc, where they take Zoro's swords, particularly Shunsui, and they take other things as well. And eventually it's, well, we need weapons, so that's why we take the weapons and stuff like that, and they take other valuables and stuff like that. And then eventually I do it as either the Tontaras already lived on Greenbed at that point in time, or that was where their kingdom moved to. And while the Riku family knew about the Tontaras and knew that they were there, because we see much later on in the flashbacks with Viola and Scarlet when they're kids, that they are friends with the Tontaras. That like Viola kind of grew up with Leo and his group of friends and stuff like that, that they all kind of grew up together to a degree. And such, and that like they knew about the Tontaras and everything like that. So there's, some stuff that gets put in there. But supposedly it's, while the Riku family have been in charge for the past 800 years, they have had this kind of, I guess, partnership/friendship with the Tontara tribe. And the Tontara tribe has this huge amount of respect for the Riku family, given the fact that, they were the ones that free, that the Riku family were the one that freed them from, being enslaved, 800 some years ago when the Don Quixote family left. And that they have kind of had this partnership where the Tontatas help try to keep Dressrosa looking beautiful and as much as they can to help keep, crops going and stuff like that for the people. So that way they have, things to eat and everything like that. And they at least have some form of a, income type of a thing, something that they can use for the kingdom to use as their gross domestic product in order to help pay for the heavenly tribute, because even 800 years later, Dressrosa is still a member of the world government. Now, given the fact that they are a kingdom that was one of the original founders of the world government, I guess there is a possibility that maybe they get some form of a discount, possibly, in regards to how much they have to pay for the heavenly tribute. I guess that's a possibility, but that's never been stated. Things that we've learned recently in the manga indicate that part of what determines how much a country has to pay as their tribute is part of how big their population is. And that's why we saw in Kuma's flashback, or what we've been seeing in Kuma's flashback when it came to King Bokori, when he tried to divide the island and only claim this part of the island is where the kingdom is, as opposed to the lower half of the island. The southern half of the island is like a lawless area and everything like that, and why he was trying to lower the population by getting rid of many of the old people as possible. Dressrosa does not look like they've ever done that. We don't have any history of the Riku family being an actual bad ruling family. The way that they are portrayed throughout the course of the story, that they are a very good ruling family, that Rikudul III was very beloved by his people, that he took care of his people, that if there was like a natural disaster like an earthquake or a landslide that happened in part of the kingdom, that he would send the soldiers to that part of the kingdom with supplies to help with rebuilding homes and to make sure that everybody had medical supplies and things like that. We also see how much respect the people have for Riku when Doflamingo shows up and starts trying to, manipulate Riku, where he's, tricking Riku into saying like, oh, if you pay me this certain amount, then I will, give you the deed to Dressrosa, or blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, Riku, I love you as a person, but you really need to think about the fact that, like, okay, this family has had no claim over Dressrosa in the past, 800 some years. I don't think he's telling the truth. I don't think the strange bird man with the pink feathers is telling the truth about this. But of course, Doflamingo is very manipulative, throughout the entire story. And he tells, Riku, if you gather up this amount of money within, by dawn or whatever, then I will sell you the kingdom and I will leave and everything like that. And of course, Doflamingo goes back on his word because, even though, Riku is, goes on, transponder snail and, begs to the people to have them send, as much money as they can and everything like that, and sends out his guards to do it, even though he's not telling them why. The faith that the people have in Riku allow him to garner that favor from them. And of course they give the money, and then of course Doflamingo, being the pink feathered prick that he is, uses his string powers to manipulate Riku and force him to ride through the streets of Dressrosa, attacking his own citizens and making the guards do the same thing, making them attack the citizens and set everything on fire and everything like that. So that way, it looks to the people like he went mad and that he betrayed them. And of course, that allows then Doflamingo to show up, and the Don Quixote pirates to show up and appear to be the heroes of Dressrosa, in the fact that, they stopped King Riku and they made all of this stuff, that they made all of this pain and suffering stop. In all honesty, the pain and suffering is about to begin for a lot of people. And he ends up taking over the throne, and of course having them seen as heroes and everything like that, so that way he can kind of legitimately be the king of Dressrosa. And over the next 10 years, of course, we see that between, you know, his string powers, and with having Sugar, and with having Viola come to work for the family as Violet, she, you know, in a way to try to, you know, prevent Doflamingo from killing her father and prevent him from killing Rebecca, who of course they know about, to keep both of them safe, because of course Scarlet dies during all of this, and then of course Kyros gets turned into a toy and everybody forgets about him. That is kind of one of the questions I've kind of had about Sugar's devil fruit. I mean, there's a lot of questions about Sugar's devil fruit to a degree, because it's very OP in what it can allow to happen. But we know that everybody else forgets that, like, all the toys used to be a person or an animal or something like that. We know that everybody forgets about that when Sugar turns them into the toy. But does Sugar forget about the fact of who they used to be? Does Sugar forget about that? I don't remember if that's ever explained in the story. That is a question that I have, of does Sugar forget about the fact that that she's, you know, everyone that she's turned into a toy? I mean, she's aware that she has that power, obviously, but does she still remember who they are individually, type of a thing? Does she have that part of a power or whatever? I don't remember if that's ever explained in the story, and if it is, and I don't know, then I apologize. But what of course ends up happening is, of course, over the next 10 years, you know, Doflamingo is the one that is in charge of the kingdom. He builds the underground port and sets up the growing of the smiles and everything like that, and has the weapons trade that he deals with, and, you know, enslaves the Tontatas again up to a certain point, by taking Moshiri prisoner and everything. And of course all of that stuff happens, and, you know, if someone is out of line, then of course Sugar turns them into a toy, and then of course that just erases them from everybody's memory, and they then just have Sugar, you know, then they just have the toy under contract and make the toy work for them. And if the toy does anything to upset the contract or try to, you know, reveal to the world that I'm not a toy, I'm a person, blah 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 blah, then they just get thrown in the scrap house, which is just sad. And then eventually they just kind of, you know, they're just worked even harder, or rust, which is not good. And of course during this 10-year time frame, of course Kyros, as the steadfast tin soldier, or the Thunder Soldier as he's also referred to, is taking care of Rebecca, and unfortunately eventually she gets taken to the Colosseum, where she is trapped there, and, you know, is ridiculed by the people, because of course the people have been under the impression that Riku went crazy, and that his granddaughter is just the same, that she's responsible, just as responsible as he is for what happened 10 years ago. We of course find out later on in the story, or later on in the arc, that the people actually knew all along, or a good chunk of the people actually knew all along, that what had happened was Doflamingo had tricked all of them, or that he had pulled one over on the kingdom in an attempt to, you know, in his, you know, bid to take the throne, which he was technically successful at, in all honesty. Out of all of the warlords, Doflamingo was actually kind of the most successful in a bunch of their goals. You know, Crocodile couldn't take over a kingdom. Mihawk just wanted to, like, sail around in his boat, in his coffin boat, and go back to his island every now and then and be alone, or go find somewhere else to have good food. And then of course Boa just wasn't all that interested in dealing with anything in the outside world. She just, it'll keep my island safe, sure. And then Morio was just lazy, and then Jinbei was doing it to protect his people, not for ambition in his own right. And then of course we know why Kuma did it now. We know about that now. Once it's, you know, once the Sugar's power is released and everybody turns back in from toys back into their real forms, into their human forms, or into their animal forms for the ones who were animals that got turned into toys, that of course the people of Dressrosa are now able to much more show how much they still believed in the Riku family, that they never believed that Riku had actually gone insane, after that night was all finished, because they knew what Riku was truly like as a king, that they didn't actually hate Rebecca and everything like that. And we see when the people actually make their way to Riku, when they find them on the plateau, and everything during, Doflamingo's disturbing hunting game, which is probably based off of what he's probably seen in the past with the population extermination games, and he kind of basically turned Luffy and his group into the rabbits, which was a comment I had been meaning to make when we were when they were going over those chapters in the flashback when we were seeing the extermination game. But I'm quite certain that Doflamingo's birdcage setup is very similar to how that would have worked, because I don't remember exactly how old Doflamingo is at the moment, but he probably, I think, would have been old enough to at least watch the population extermination game that happened on God Valley, and remember it to a degree, or at least heard some of the other celestial dragons talk about it if God Valley was the last one, which I may end up bringing up later on when I talk about Doflamingo. But one of the other things is, of course, when the people who seem to be like this angry mob eventually make their way to Riku, they find him and they end up bowing down and apologizing to him for how they, acted over the last 10 years. And Riku is not mad at them at all, and I don't even think Rebecca is mad at them at all, and everything like that. We also know that other fighters who were put into the Colosseum and everything like that, how brutally they were treated, and how Rebecca tried to take care of them as much as she could. And of course, they appreciated that, and they respected Rebecca and were rooting for her to win and everything like that, and all of that other stuff. So we see how Rebecca is actually beloved by the people, even though with Doflamingo around and with all of his cronies around, they had to pretend that they did not care for Rebecca, and that they wanted her to be punished for what Doflamingo did, or for what Riku did. And of course, as I said, Doflamingo builds the Smile Factory and everything else, and he has his birdcage game that he does, going through everything. And a bunch of this I'll go into much more detail when I get to the different characters and stuff like that from their different points of view. Everything happens with Pika rearranging everything in the kingdom, with moving the sunflower fields and the plateau and everything like that. And of course, Doflamingo using the strings from the birdcage in order to just basically rip Dressrosa apart and destroy so much of it and everything. And of course, everything happens with the Navy there, with Fujitora and everything, and of course, Luffy and Law fighting against Doflamingo and everything, and eventually, Luffy defeating Doflamingo and saving the kingdom, and destroying the birdcage and everything like that. And of course, this leads to, of course, now Dressrosa can kind of enter this new era to a degree of peace, where they are actually able to coexist with the Tontada much better than they did in the past, because the Tontada don't have to hide, where they make statues of Lucy, or Lucy, however they want to pronounce it, and Usopp alongside Kyros' statue, of course, and how they are able to start rebuilding after everything that Doflamingo put them through. But now they have a royal family back in place in regards to Riku and Viola, and still treating Rebecca as a princess, even though she abdicated her throne to go and be with Kyros and everything, so she could go and live with her father, like she's wanted to for her whole life. She's wanted to for the past 10 years and everything. And everything that happens there. So, and of course dealing with the Marines in the end and everything like that when Sengoku and Tsuru show up. And we get a bunch of that stuff. And technically the last time we saw Dressrosa was during the Oh My Fam Beige, Gang Beiji's Oh My Family thing that he, cover page series that they did, where they ended up in Dressrosa, where they ended up dealing with the Germ Pirates, and then they eventually found Lola there, and, they then leave, and Lola marries Gotti. And all of that stuff. But of course, we also know that Riku and Rebecca and Viola and Kyros, along with Moshiri and Leo and some of the other Tontatas, went to Reverie. And, Riku pleaded his case to the kings of to the other 50 kings that were there, as did Cobra, in regards to the plights that they both went through with Alabaster with Crocodile and with Dressrosa when it came to Doflamingo and everything with that plight or that blight that was put upon their land because of these two warlords. And how, that led to the warlord system being abolished. We also know that there was a two-part system there, and the fact that, Fujitora had, also brought up the whole idea of the science division and everything like that with the Seraphim that they would have known about at that point in time in implementing the Seraphim. In that regard. So, we haven't seen anything else about Dressrosa at this point in time. As I said, I might make some predictions on specific characters later on. Obviously, I want them to eventually end up, having it that, they interact with the people from Dressrosa again. If that ends up being that, Riku and Kyros and Rebecca show up, and they're ready to fight and everything like that, and help the Straw Hats and everything, either against the world government, depending on how that goes, or against Blackbeard or something like that. I would love that, to see them show up there, the Straw Hat Grand Fleet with, the Tontatas rolling up. And they've got Kyros and Rebecca there with them, and Viola there using her, glare powers, her eye powers and everything like that in order to help them in regards to dealing with enemies and everything like that. So I'm kind of, seeing how that goes. We'll see what happens with that. Those are just kind of what I would like to see happen. But that's kind of a basic overview of Dressrosa in regards to a bunch of that information. I will do something very similar to this when I get to possibly Totland, because I will be talking about Big Mom because she is a queen, and I will be talking in regards to how she is as a ruler, but I still have to go through all of Dressrosa people as well. But then I will also do something similar when I get to Wano, because of how much information we know about the history of Wano and everything like that, and additional information that we may have gotten by the time I get to that point. So that's what I have here. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. As I said, the next one will be specifically about King Rikudol III and his life. And I hope that you will enjoy that one as well. And I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.